Yeah, speaking of uncomfortable comparisons, Liverpool, of course, are in Champions League action
Mm.
tonight against Villarreal in the second leg of their semi-final. It looks like there'll be plenty more of these nights to come as well, following the news that you first reported last week that manager Jürgen Klopp has extended his contract with the club. There's some lovely details in your in-depth piece with the Athletic Simon Hughes as well. And the more you read of that, David, the more you realise that this was just an easy decision for all parties, wasn't it?
Absolute no-brainer, Ian. Jurgen Klopp's one of the greatest things that has happened to Liverpool or any Premier League club. He's a top manager, amazing character, very, very good at building a team around him. And that's why he was so quick to credit Pep Lijnders and his assistants. He lives and breathes Liverpool, its values, its identity, its DNA. They're a glove fit for each other, and they have been since he was appointed in 2015. There was a consensus in that he was going to be leaving at the end of his contract in 2024 and going and taking a sabbatical, which I think a number of rivals would have been rubbing their hands at. But then the pandemic hit and he had a number of personal issues. It was documented that he lost his mother very sadly. He wasn't able to do a lot of the travel that he would normally do back and forth between Liverpool and Germany and potentially elsewhere. He was basically home alone on Merseyside. There are all sorts of issues with the team, the defence in particular. There were injuries to Van Dijk and Matip and others in there too that meant their title defence didn't go to plan. It was a very difficult January window. They made a couple of late signings to paper over the cracks. And then finally they started to see the light. And we actually broke the story about Ibrahima Konate signing for Liverpool, their one big signing of the summer. And they started to get things back on track, and they came into this season and they've gone toe-to-toe with Manchester City in the Premier League, in the Champions League. They're into the FA Cup final. They've managed to pick up the League Cup as well. They're in contention for an unprecedented quadruple. And at the heart of that has been Jurgen Klopp. He was exhausted, but he got a good stretch of months off in the summer to rejuvenate. We saw pictures of him with a beer in hand on a boat in the sun, which is exactly where he wants to be. He's not more comfortable anywhere else other than perhaps on a training pitch, but in the off season anyway. And he looked to me from very early on to be reborn, a new man, and he was fresh and he was hungry. You could see it in his eyes and the tone of his voice as well. And so I think Liverpool would have always been up for him signing a new contract. That's no question. So it was more on his shoulders. They would have had to be succession planning to an extent, what they want to do beyond him. And I think there was suggestions of Steven Gerrard being the successor one day. Maybe he still will be. Pep Lijnders himself having ambitions to go into manager and knowing Liverpool inside out. But Klopp's the number one. And so if he changed his mind over this sabbatical, then I think it would have been a very quick deal to be done. With the COVID absence, which was basically time lost, I think he felt that he owed Liverpool that year or even more back. He wasn't at his best. I think he and his wife Ulla, who is incredibly important, as he's mentioned publicly, she was in the away end at Manchester City recently.
I was fascinated by her role in all of this. I mentioned before about the detail in your piece, this idea of a key kitchen table chat, which I think we've all had with our partners at one time or another, being a real reason behind this happening and giving her approval almost that she's happy in the area and she wants to stay part of this atmosphere that they seem to have at the club at the minute. Brilliant.
Yeah, I think we know who wears the trousers in that household, and she really is the matriarch and somebody that is key to his life professionally and personally. And we touched upon in the piece that they've got a house project in Germany that will take a while to come to fruition. So why not stay here and crack on for a bit longer? And in recent weeks, his mindset changed and he communicated that to his representative from what we hear. And his representative made contact with the Liverpool ownership. And we saw that he came over, I think it's Mark Kosicka, his name, the agent, for the midweek match in the Champions League, the first leg of their Villarreal tie. But he was actually also, to our knowledge, at the Everton Merseyside derby the previous Sunday, but it wasn't until the Villarreal match that he seemed to be spotted. And reports emerged the following morning in the press with the likes of Paul Joyce in the Times, Chris Bascom in the Telegraph, that Liverpool felt that Jürgen Klopp was now open to the idea of extending his contract, and some talks had taken place and they were in a positive sort of momentum around it. So we very quickly made some calls ourselves and managed to establish that actually that contract was signed on that very day, Thursday. And I think some reporters who were at the club's training ground saw some photographs being taken of Jürgen and his staff in a slightly unusual way. And so, yeah, we managed to break the story that he had added 2 years onto his existing contract, was set to expire in 2024, well, now in 2026. The same with his closest staff members, not only those who sit on the bench with him, but some of those in the background as well. And crucially in this story, Ian, we understand that Jürgen Klopp will retain the same salary and just extend his time at Anfield. But he wanted to see his closest staff gain a bit of an uplift financially. And that's what's happened. And I think that points to the measure of the man himself. Everybody's extremely happy and content. I think he wanted to make sure that his staff wanted to continue. And as soon as he floated this idea with them, they were really enthusiastic, understandably. And so it was done and dusted very quickly. And on they go into the future. Great news for Liverpool, terrible news for all of their rivals.
Yeah, I was at Old Trafford when the news was announced ahead of Manchester United's game against Chelsea. I can say that the fans around me weren't particularly pleased with the news that was filtering through. The knock-on effect, I suppose, for Liverpool now is the effect that it has on some of the contract negotiations for their players as well, perhaps most notably Mohamed Salah. Do you think this is something that Liverpool could show to Salah as the manager's now committed? It's your turn next.
They can. And it's not a bad thing, but I don't think it is central to Salah's decision. And why I say that is because Klopp was already under contract for the next 2 years, so he wasn't going anywhere for the foreseeable future. Salah would have had to consider who would be the manager beyond 2024, and he now knows that will be Klopp. But I think Salah's decision at his age is really for the here and now and for the next couple of years. So while it may help and be good news for everybody at the club, I don't think it was the determining factor in Salah. That appears to be slightly financial. He sort of has denied that in a variety of ways in the interviews and messages that have come out from him and his representative. And then also the length of the contract is clearly something that's going to be key around security. There's a respect element here, I think, as well. He seems to be intimating that Liverpool should have moved heaven and earth for him, given what he's done for them, which is a fair point. He's been absolutely incredible, but Liverpool won't want to destroy their wage structure. And they're very careful in analysing what contracts to give to what players at what stages of their career and what they've still got to give in terms of their football and their influence on the squad. So many factors in this. And, you know, our recent impression was that a compromise would be reached. That hasn't happened yet. There's been new reports about Paris Saint-Germain. So we'll have to see how that develops. But elsewhere, Ian, you've got the likes of Sadio Mane, who's out of contract in the same summer, 2023. Roberto Firmino, 2023. Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain, 2023. James Milner this coming summer. And for them to hear that Jürgen Klopp is going to be remaining in charge for longer will be a key factor. But again, not the only factor, because Klopp was here to stay. I think the bigger influence will be on those who are considering signing for Liverpool, because you're going to be looking at 4 or 5 year contracts. I know they only make 1 or 2 signings. I know the lure of Liverpool, their style of play, their atmosphere, the fan base, the DNA, the history, the chances of success is enough to pull you towards Anfield. But having Klopp provides an X factor that nobody is going to ignore. And we think in the negotiations that players have had in recent years, the idea of Klopp being the manager has been a key source of conversation.